Hi there, I'm August Bryce. Welcome to Thriving with Technology. Today's podcast is going to be amazing. I'm talking to Professor Olle Johansson. Now, I've had the pleasure of hanging out with Olle a couple of times. First at the Global EMF conference in London a few years ago, and then 2 years ago, I met him at the EMF conference that Tech Wellness sponsored, the EMF Health Conference, the very first one. Olle, this man is amazing. He is considered the world's leading authority in the field of EMF radiation and health effects because, he was the first one 30 years ago, and he's going to talk about this, to discover what he termed screen dermatitis, which later rolled into electromagnetic hypersensitivity. He was the first one to notice this, talk about it, and research it as a professor at the internationally acclaimed Karolinska Institute in Sweden. He has written, listen to this, over 600 papers, and he is still doing research. In fact, just last year, he did research on how EMF affects the honeybees. And he did this in November and published it then. And of course, we're going to link to that because I'm sure that we all want to know about it. In fact, he's going to talk about it a little bit in today's podcast. He's going to talk about how he discovered screen dermatitis, and he has a warning for us, which I have to say actually surprised me in its intensity because although Olle is really a brilliant man with such a huge breadth of knowledge, he always makes the conversation light and fun because he's just a funny guy and so enjoyable to listen to. So this answer is so intense. I think you're really going to want to hear it. So here we go. We're going to dig in. Let's get started with Professor Olle Johansson. So Olle, welcome. Welcome to Thriving with Technology. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. Here is a beautiful winter's day. It has been snowing quite a lot, and being a Swede, we love, of course, the white landscape. It looks like a fairy tale, really. So, no, I'm feeling fine. Thank you.
That's beautiful. I can just imagine it. So, Olle, I got into this field because I've always felt that the energy from my cell phone, the energy from all the wireless devices just messes with the energy of my body. And I realized it the first time I held a cell phone over 30 years ago, and I actually have it on videotape. I have opening the present and my husband saying, here, use it, try it. And I pick it up and he goes, call your mom. And I just press it and my body shakes because I can feel the energy. Okay. And it didn't feel good. And so that sent me on a quest to figure out why everyone else felt so great using their phones. So anyway, and then later, of course, we came to understand that it was electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today, because you're really the man who put this together in the first place, right? Over at the Karolinska Institute.
Yeah, that's very kind of you to say that, and it was long before you were even born, because we started already at the end of the 1970s, and one of several focuses at that time was electrohypersensitivity, but another leg was also whether women that were pregnant, should they sit in front of the newly introduced personal computers or not? And based upon our research, as well as other scientists around the world, in Sweden it was decided that they could opt out while they were pregnant, which I think was a very wise call, actually.
And that was your research?
Yes.
And what did you discover?
Yeah, and also other research groups. The authorities here in Sweden, they put the data together, and we didn't know very much at the time, but people felt we knew enough. And there was actually quite a quest to come up with low radiation computer screens. And now we are talking about the mid-1980s. And that was also very interesting because many companies, they were fighting out the battle. And I would say the winners really were Nokia Consumer Electronics in Finland, who developed the very low radiation computer screens for laptops as well as for stationary computers and personal computers. And of course, today, if you and I would stand somewhere, and shout to people, come here, please buy our high radiation computer screen, no one would buy it because people have learned that there is something with electromagnetic fields and health, and we better go as low as possible.
Yes, but we still have high radiation screens, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because the companies, they reduced dramatically at certain intervals, but unfortunately that meant with the introduction of more high-speed electronics and computer pieces that at some other frequency intervals, they became more high radiation, but no one understood that at that time. You have to believe me, we were all kind of amateurs, and probably we still are amateurs. And there is so much to any household or occupational equipment. So one has to think many, many rounds when you construct such electronics.
Back in the 70s, you started doing research, and
at the end of the 1970s.
Yes.
Actually, the year that is important here is 1979, because the first cases of electrohypersensitive people were reported from a country you probably have heard of, United States of America, and from Norway.
Yes, I would be in that group. And by the way, I was born, but that was very sweet of you to insinuate that I wasn't. I'll go with that. But yes, so I felt it immediately, and it didn't feel good, and it remains that way. But what exactly did you discover?
Well, it all started actually not with a podcast, but with a radio program. And you have to believe me, at that time, I wasn't any radio listener. I couldn't concentrate with the radio on. And one evening at 8 o'clock in the laboratory, I was about to leave and go home, and someone had left a radio on, and I was just about to turn it off when I heard a woman talk about something with personal computers, computer screens, and skin rashes in people that at that time didn't have any real name. Later on, I coined the expression screen dermatitis just to tell people that they had got these skin irritations, skin rashes, pricking pain, and so on in front of computer screens. And that later on in the 1990s developed into the functional impairment called electrohypersensitivity. Had I turned the radio off, we would not talk today. So it's really very odd to talk about this, because I was so close to just turn it off. But I started to listen to the woman, and her name is Kajsa Wedin, and she worked at one of the trade unions here in Sweden. And she was asking for expertise in clinical neurology. And I'm not a clinical neurologist, but I thought, well, I'm in the basic neurosciences. That's close enough. So I called her, and that was the start of the very first study where we met together with a physicist and a lot of other people just to interview people with electrohypersensitivity, just to listen to their personal stories. And that formed the basis of also taking skin biopsies. And it was then that we had like 20, 25, maybe even 30 experts in the group that was formed. But we were the only ones that actually found something, namely what we saw in these skin biopsies completely mimic any form of classical radiation damage, which you would have got from playing around with plutonium or radium or uranium, or exposing yourself to X-rays or strong ultraviolet light. But these women and men had only sat in front of computer screens. They had not been playing with radioactivity or anything like that. But still, alterations in the cutaneous biopsies, they were exactly the same as from so-called ionizing radiation. So that became the working model, that something in the computer had changed the skin in such a way as if they had a radiation damage. Could it be the so-called non-ionizing radiation? And among them, for instance, the microwaves that we use 24/7 for all our fun gadgets like cell phones, smartphones, tablets, laptops, etc.
Okay, so let me break in here and talk a little bit about the definitions for wireless energy, because that's what Ole's talking about. Now, wireless energy comes from all of our wireless devices. It comes from our cell phones, our smartphones, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the AirPods. It comes from anything that makes a connection wirelessly, including your microwave. So all the terms for that energy are interchangeable, but there are quite a few, and they are non-ionizing radiation. It's also called microwave energy. It's also called microwaves. It's also called RF for radio frequency radiation. It's also called EMR for electromagnetic radiation. And a lot of people just call it EMF because it is a type of EMF. And Olle, I can confirm this because I do a lot of videos to show people the invisible wireless energy. And I use my meters and I want to demonstrate because, you can't see it, smell it, touch it. A lot of people don't even know it's there. And so the meters help to make it visible. So I was doing the low power Wi-Fi and then a normal Wi-Fi. I was doing the comparison. I stood 3 feet away, held my meter, and was only exposed for maybe 3 minutes because I could feel it. It was very uncomfortable. Within probably 40 minutes, my producer said, "Oh my gosh, what happened to your hand?" My hand looked like it had been burned. Red, bumpy, painful. It took probably, about a week for it to finally subside. So, I completely get it.
Yeah, this is exactly what we saw too, We exposed people with electron hypersensitivity for as short as 1 hour or even half an hour, and they got exactly the same. They looked as if they had been out in the sun for a whole day, but they hadn't, because this was in December in Stockholm. And trust me, December in Stockholm, there is no sun, it's just darkness, and they were not exposed to anything. And then led us to more and more realize that the electromagnetic fields could impose on the skin as well as other organs, of course, and produce all the symptoms. So that became, as I said, our basic research model. This was just about the radiation damage. Unfortunately, and you have probably come across the same experience, suddenly society, often represented by medical doctors, said, no, there is nothing wrong with the computer. It's in the head of these electro-hypersensitive people. So we met an enormous opposition during the following years, and around the mid-1990s, all possibilities to get governmental funding for research and so on, they were actively stopped. And since then, we have had a tremendous hard time to actually survive, if you call it like that, to get the necessary money to do some kind of investigations.
Why? Why did it stop?
I wish I had the simple answer. I have to say, I don't know. Having all the history of medical research in the back of my head, it's tempting, of course, to say, well, our research could jeopardize the coming microwave-based wireless society. And no one wanted to listen to this, especially not politicians, people from the economy side, the different companies, the operators. They just didn't want to know. But I cannot say that I know it was that cause behind it, but we were actively stopped.
Well, what's so great about today? So many people really are becoming aware of the term EMF, and they're becoming aware of wireless energy radiation.
Yeah.
And they're starting to understand that because there are, thousands of other research studies showing that there is a biological effect?
Yes, many thousands.
Many thousands, that maybe this could apply to them or their children. And so knowing that now, which I'm so glad, I would love to know from you the most interesting thing that you have found out research-wise in, say, the last year that we should all know about.
Oh, wow. I would actually go a few years back to 2017, and I am not involved in that research, but that is the kind of results that keep me awake in the night, namely American scientists led by a person organization called Tahiri showed in 2017 that ordinary bacteria you have on your body as well as inside of your body, if they're exposed to the old type GSM, what we call the second generation mobile telephony, as well as to super modern Wi-Fi routers, nothing much happened apart from one thing. And it is that thing that keeps me awake. Namely, the bacteria became, after exposing themselves to an ordinary Wi-Fi exposure or a 2G cell phone call, they became antibiotic resistant. The very same year, completely independent of each other, the G20 countries in the world had a separate meeting in Europe only about the fact that more than 25,000 people die prematurely in Europe each year from antibiotic resistance in medical health care. And it was said that by the year 2050, this figure worldwide would be more than 10 million people. And last year, during the corona crisis, the World Health Organization in Geneva in Switzerland, they were asked, what is the most threatening and dramatic future panorama you can see in the field of healthcare? And they immediately said, well, that's antibiotic resistance.
Well, yes, and we have
crisis,
heard.
The corona crisis compared to that is just nothing, because the 10 million people we are talking about 2050 that would die prematurely, if you combine the G20 meeting with the results of Tahiri, the 10 million people could become 7.6 billion, because with antibiotic resistance, then again, as we did in the end of the 1900th century, then again, people would start dying like from a splinter in their thumb.
Wow.
And, I immediately called then a relative I have who is an orthopedic surgeon. And I asked her, tell me, I said, is this with antibiotic resistance? We see it on the newspaper flyers and the headlines in television news and so on. But how bad is it? Tell me. And then she laughed and said, bad. Well, it's much more than bad, It's a dramatic situation. And we are waiting for someone in the world to come up with new types of antibiotics. And if they don't do that, well, then we have a real problem at hand. And as I said, a few months later on, then the World Health Organization announced that this is the biggest threat in the human future, antibiotic resistance. So, of course, that kind of studies, and they are not the only ones, Tahiri and co-workers, there are other replications. They keep me awake, yes.
I agree. And of course, my audience has heard of antibiotic resistance and the dangers of it. And what we mostly understand about the antibiotic resistance is that we are taking too many of them and that they're ending up in our water supplies. And so that's why we are becoming resistant to antibiotics. Yeah. So what percentage, if you could guess, maybe you won't, but what percentage of the problem do you actually believe is the effect of the wireless energy on bacteria, on our cells?
On the bacteria, based upon the research I read, I would say that the effect of wireless radiation is far bigger than the effect of a few molecules in the drinking water. So I think here it's time to reflect, and I hope that the world governments and parliaments and so on are not only occupied with the COVID-19 question, but also spends time on this. Because while we talk, you and I, every bacteria in the world is, of course, exposed to wireless energy 24/7, wherever you are, wherever you live, wherever you go to school, wherever you work, and all the bacteria, every everywhere. They are constantly exposed. And maybe while we talk, they are becoming antibiotic resistant. And with such a biological system on the loose in the world, well, anything could happen.
It's extraordinarily scary.
Yeah,
now, tell me,
and
what was the amount? What was the amount of exposure?
Oh, that was just common exposure as you would get from any cell phone or baby alarm or whatever, So, I mean, you can imagine every evening I go down on my knees and pray to God, please make these scientists wrong. Because if they are not wrong, wow, then we could have a future that we need to really care about now.
Right. As opposed to make these scientists wrong, wake up the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And because, Ulla, and I believe you're the same as me, I'm in a completely wired up environment. I'm very fortunate to be in a home that has solar panels on top, so the ambient RF doesn't get in. I'm in a very, very safe zone all the time. However, sometimes I walk outside and somebody has a booster and somebody else, has their smart meter and somebody else has the cell phone tower down the road. And then I'm not protected, but I can come to my home and feel safe and re-energize my body. But what we're doing is we're really spreading this everywhere. And you had this fabulous quote in Generations Apt where you said we've been exposed to 1 quintillion times more energy than we were 10 years ago. And that was 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Something like that. And that's important to remember that when you look upon public exposure, even if you don't even own a smartphone or a baby alarm or a tablet, you are still exposed wherever you are, as you said. And if you compare that to the natural background into which elderly people like myself were born, then the difference to today is a quintillion times higher, or for other frequency intervals, actually much higher than that. And finally, since all these exposures from different gadgets are really artificial in its innermost meaning, you can even say that the exposures are infinitely much higher because there has never been such an environmental toxin around before. And your body is completely without any protection. Again, I remember there was a governmental person here in Sweden who said, no, the radiation can only penetrate from a cell phone a few millimeters into the skin. And since I'm a very sort of simple man, I took 2 laboratory technicians, 2 women that were a little bit overweight, and I asked them to place a cell phone between themselves and then hug, really pressing all the female flesh together. And then I tried to call the cell phone, and believe it or not, it was immediately ringing as if the women were not even present. So the penetration, of course, is right through, as it is right through walls, ceilings, floors, and you name it.
I love this, and I 100% understand. And I believe that my audience will too, and does. And so my number one recommendation is to wire up whenever possible. You know, I can use my cell phone except to make a call, but I can do everything else on my smartphone while I'm wired to the internet.
And actually, from a technical point of view, if you use fiber optics for the wiring, here in Sweden, it's becoming more and more common and popular. The technical characters of your system will improve dramatically. It's much better than to have a wireless system. So if you have a wire based on fiber optics, that's really optimal. And as you say, if you have a wired cell phone or computer, you get the same things. It's the same videos, the same pictures, the same text. And so there is no difference at all. But you get it in a safe format.
And you get it faster, and it's more reliable.
Faster.
And there's more privacy.
Any disturbances and so on, So it's an ideal system. And honestly, in Sweden, for instance, you don't really see people run around that much with a computer in their hand as it was meant to be. People are actually stationary in their workplace and in their homes. They're not that mobile. Of course, the cell phone is a different different story. But in the long-term run, maybe we have, as sort of evolution, technical evolution, having to take a few steps backwards and go
back. With wires all over our homes. Remember that? Remember when we first got internet?
And, we made all our necessary calls and so anyhow. So maybe we need to do that. And but I remember I gave a lecture once and there was an elderly man present. And I always ask the audience when I start, how much more of the third generation mobile telephony exposure do you get today compared to like 20 or 30 years ago? And I asked them, is it twice as much or 3 times as much? And this old man said, no, it's a lot more. I would say it's 100 times more. And the whole audience, they went, no, that's not even possible, But then I had to deliver the answer, as you already have done, that the difference is actually a quintillion times more, a 1 with 18 zeros behind. So the words like it's a colossal increase or astronomical increase or biblical increase, they don't really cover it. It's so big. And as you said before, it's invisible. It doesn't smell. So you don't know. It's there all the time, 24/7, really. And people are exposed and it goes through anything, including their own bodies.
Now, to this point, what health effects do you believe that we're seeing now that we might not be relating to our wireless intake?
I would point to effects on fertility. Here in Europe, and I know it's the same in other parts of the world, including North America, the quality and life expectancy of male sperm cells have dramatically gone down. And when scientists the last 15 years have done very good experiments exposing sperm cells in test tubes to mobile phone radiation, they can then produce the very same effects. And
yes, there was a great study in China, too, where they actually put them in front of Wi-Fi's and measured, had the same results. Yes, I have a great article about it. Yes.
And, there is a lot of discussion about, for instance, maybe there are a few extra cancer cases and so on. Society could deal probably with all of that. But if we have an impact on the fertility, that could be so dramatic. So maybe there won't even be a future for mankind. And I don't want to sort of paint too bad a picture, but I heard a few days ago from Japan that the number of adult diapers have now surpassed the number sold for baby diapers. Meaning that fewer and fewer people in Japan, for different reasons, gets babies. And here in Europe, it's quite dramatic in many countries. And I remember the Minister for Public Health in Italy, he said, and that's about 5-10 years ago, that if nothing changes regarding sperm cell quality and fertility, then, and I quote, the last Italian will be born in 50 years' time, and Italy will only be upheld by immigration thereafter.
Oh, Olle, it is a devastating and heartbreaking
and
fact.
And that's the same for most countries in the Western world.
Yeah, we do what's called the Tech Wellness Ways, and they're just bite-sized, easy to comprehend and actually act upon ideas for being well with technology in all different ways. But one of the most popular is thinking about having a baby. Tell your man to get his cell phone out of his pocket and his laptop off his lap. And so I think that is resonating. People do understand on a very real level that fertility is an issue. So I thank you for bringing that up. And also, if you could tell everyone just one thing, the most important thing today, what would that be?
Wow. Perhaps, again, and I make you disappointed because, again, it's not directly, but more indirectly about humans. And that's, of course, the effects on pollinating insects. As you know, the reduction of pollinating insects like honeybees has been dramatic all over the world. You hardly see insects any longer. And when, again, controlled experiments have been done exposing, for instance, honeybee hives to cell phone radiation, the queen, she leaves the beehive with her workers and she don't return. So she just flies away and she doesn't return. Maybe that is going on worldwide. And again, while we talk, this exposure that could be one of the most important environmental toxins is out there doing its job, not only communicating between gadgets, but also exposing everything else in biology as well as human medicine. And so I would probably point to that kind of effects that, again, are quite scary. And again, I often go down on my knees and ask God again to make those scientists wrong.
Well, and my hope is that people will hear you and their reaction will be to turn off their phone.
Yeah.
To get a wire up kit and get their homes wired, to most definitely ask their schools, ask the schools to.
I mean, if you really should make a difference, then I would say the following: then you cannot have any of these wireless gadgets. And you should, as you said before, go back to wired concepts. And back is not the word, because back is, in this case, the future with fiber optics and so on. And in the meantime, you should not allow yourself or your family to ever call a cell phone number, because if you do, then the entire infrastructure must be up and working.
That's a very good point.
That's
a very good point.
Situation. And, it's a little bit like, what should I say? I mean, people, they look in the computer, you know that more than half of the connected computer time worldwide is about pornography. And of course, if you sit there in your home watching pornography, then you support the entire worldwide infrastructure. You don't know where this film was made and under which circumstances and so on, So the only way to be ethically correct is to never, ever allow yourself to watch it and download it.
That's a great recommendation.
I mean,
I'm all for that.
But I mean,
for many reasons.
Now that a lot of mostly men say, no, bollocks, I want to have my porn, But do you really want that? And going back then to the exposures from microwaves, if you are concerned about yourself and your family regarding your health, shouldn't you also be concerned about all families in the world? And someone said recently, I cannot be free if you are not. And that's
absolutely.
And that's the same. I cannot be healthy if I not allow you to be it as well.
Absolutely. And I think that the more people become aware, the more they will make those good and healthy choices for all of us.
And the interesting part here is that now people may sort of be very frustrated and think, no, I don't want to get rid of my cell phone and computer and so on. But by acting the way we said, they will send a very strong signal to the manufacturers to come up with new inventions. And the last 5-6 years, the most common question I've got in public lectures is, okay, I hear you, but what can we do? What is the solution? And I don't want to take too much time, but I could just mention quickly, for instance, in Japan, you can buy Japanese cars which have a simple switch inside the car, turning off the Wi-Fi inside the car. Because
I can't wait till that's in America. That's brilliant. Yeah. I just have to get an old car.
Many parents and adults in Japan, they are very health conscious, and they say, I don't want to expose my family to this. Okay, we put this simple switch in, There you go. In Poland, here in Europe, soon they will launch a low radiation cell phone. It's a step. It's maybe not the final solution, but it's at least a step. And I see more and more and more of this kind of thinking. And as you say, maybe while we talk, some young men and women sit in a garage somewhere in California inventing tomorrow's low radiation gadgets. We don't know that, but maybe.
So, Olle, thank you so much. Your knowledge is incredible. And I'm so thrilled that you've been with me today. Where can people find you?
They could go through you, and you have my email address. And I will ask people to make short questions because I get very many questions every day.
Yes, and I'm not hoping that they will ask you questions. I want to know how they can move forward your research.
That's very kind of you to bring that up. And again, I know you have the link, and if anyone is interested, they could support us with research money. And trust me, we need every single dollar, pound, or yen, because it is difficult to get the attention of the public organizations and the governmental organizations. So we really need the support.
Well, Tech Wellness will support you, and hopefully our listeners will as well. Thank you so much, and we'll have you back very, very soon.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.
You be well, Olle. Now, wasn't that a great interview? Isn't he so interesting? Do you love the word pictures? The way he describes things? I'll never forget the first time that I met him, and we were talking about, wireless in schools and the proliferation of just Wi-Fi everywhere. And he said, imagine if you told parents that you were going to back up the bus to the cafeteria with all of its diesel fumes and open the doors of the cafeteria and just let it flow in there. Just turn on the bus and let those exhaust fumes go into the cafeteria. And the parents would say, what? No, we're not going to stop that. That's crazy. We don't want all those diesel fumes in the cafeteria where the kids are eating. But at the very same time, parents don't understand that diesel fumes are a class 2B carcinogen, as designated by the World Health Organization, and so is wireless EMF. So we're allowing that wireless EMF to flow throughout the schools, yet we're not doing anything about it. So I thought that was an amazing word picture from him. Now, the top 5 takeaways. Olle shared the recent disturbing research discovering how EMF exposure from just wireless phones and Wi-Fi caused antibiotic resistance. Put a link to that research in the notes, and you can also find it in our research section at techwellness.com. But Olle emphasized that this is the one thing that keeps him up at night. We've all heard about antibiotic resistance in the media. Scientists are seeing that germs are becoming resistant to the antibiotics we have. So Olle is worried that if in the future bacteria become even more resistant to antibiotics because of EMF radiation, the devastation that we're seeing in this current pandemic will look like nothing. Those are Olle's words. Now, second, I'm sure you remember Olle talking about those 2 women hugging with the phone in between them, and the phone clearly had signal because it rang. So yes, that was a great word picture, a reminder that even though you can't see it or smell it or touch it, wireless EMF radiation can and does penetrate your body. So stay away from it when you can. Number 3, it was so interesting to hear about Olle's latest research on honeybees. I've put a link to that research in the notes, but they actually measured the effects of EMF inside the hive. You'll see the honeybees did not like it. Number 4, looking forward to that new low EMF phone, right? We'll let you know when that comes out. And I, for one, am so interested in the car that allows you to turn off Wi-Fi and hopefully Bluetooth. And that reminds me to encourage you to not keep your phones on even if you're just sitting in the car, because the radiation is actually amplified when you move as the phone continually looks for new signal from tower to tower. And also, just do as many simple things as you can to limit yours and your family's exposure to radiation. Scientists are confirming more and more that it's indeed a health issue. So not only are we happy to share the latest scientific research on techwellness.com, we also have 10 easy and great tips to limit your radiation around your home and great solutions that you can look for in our shop. So until next time, I'm August Bryce. Be well.